Welcome to Continuing Education Module number 28, Integrating Wellbeing into Your Program, Updating Your Wellness Efforts. Our agenda for this session is well-being really new? How should well-being be defined? Where can well-being be addressed in your wellness program? Possible metrics for well-being, important questions for you to resolve, and a summary of key points. First of all, is well-being new? Actually, it's not. We have focused on the physical dimensions of wellness, and we've followed up on health risk, clinical risk, and behavioral risk. But the issues of physical have always been with us. We usually have included a mental issue of wellness. So that's gotten into stress and anxiety, depression, and areas like that. We now are seeing more wellness programs addressing financial well-being. So that given the fact that personal finances are one of the most stressful elements for American workers, according to the American Psychological Association's Work and Well-Being Survey, it's carried out annually, financial wellness tends to be an important thing for us to be considering. We also can look at emotional health, we can look at social health, we can look at cultural health, we can look at intellectual health, we can look at professional health, we can look at spiritual health, which deals with purpose and meaning, and we can look at worldview, how we look at the world. So there's lots of different areas that we have had in the definitions of wellness since its beginning in the early 30s. But this particular approach that we've taken in the last 2 decades has not really emphasized too many issues beyond the first 2 and potentially 3 issues on the list. So well-being is not new to wellness, it's new to our efforts to bring wellness activities to working populations. CDC, Center for Disease Control and Prevention's definition of well-being is as follows. First of all, they admit there's no consensus around a single definition of well-being. Nobody's using a single type of definition, but there's general agreement that at minimum, well-being includes the presence of positive emotions and moods. That's our contentment level or our happiness. And authentic happiness is one of the issues that comes out of the science around positive psychology that is used in well-being. The absence of negative emotions, e.g., depression or anxiety, and satisfaction with life, fulfillment, and positive functioning. In simple terms, well-being can be described as judging life positively and feeling good about it. Researchers have viewed well-being in many different ways over the years, and that includes physical well-being, financial well-being, social well-being, development and activity, emotional well-being, psychological well-being, life satisfaction, domain-specific satisfaction. So if we go into the areas of career or community or culture, there have been an extensive amount of research activity around these concepts, and that's relatively new to the wellness field, but it's been going on in the sociological fields, social psychology, political, economics, all the variety of areas have had a certain level of research in this area. And it also deals with engaging activities and work. And it's the issue of how the balance of our lives between our work life and our private life, how those things tend to shape up. So these are some of the issues which have come off of the Centers for Disease Control's website around this issue of well-being. One major well-being construct that's been used in the field of wellness comes from the Gallup Healthways Wellbeing 5 instrument. And that instrument, I believe, was developed by Joe Lutzinger, and who used to be the Director of Health Promotion and Wellness for Union Pacific Railroad. The purpose, first of all, is one of the first of the 5 areas, and it's liking what you do each day and being motivated to achieve your goals. The social aspects, having supportive relationships and love in your life. The financial issues, as part of the Well-Being 5, is managing your economic life to reduce stress and increase security. And then our community aspects, liking where you live, feeling safe, and having pride in your community. And finally, a physical aspect, which really picks up on many of our wellness, traditional wellness issues, but having good health and enough energy to get things done daily. Now, these are the parts of the construct, which are now part of Wellbeing 5. The Gallup Healthways Wellbeing 5 construct is simply one way of looking at well-being. Our perspective on well-being is kind of captured by this picture of carrot cake. And the idea is that wellness is like the cake and well-being is like the icing. I don't think that it really would help us if we got rid of the cake and just ate the icing, or chose to not have the icing on the cake. So just like a carrot cake as a dessert is really good because it includes both, and it includes the ability to have one enrich the other. So that's the context on our perspective on well-being. We don't want to throw out the issues that we were attempting to address in the context of wellness to now focus on these 5 new areas of well-being. The research is really incomplete around what the implications of doing that are, and it would probably be a very bad idea for us to leave behind many of the issues we've developed and found through epidemiology and through our studies and scientific analysis, leave them behind and go to something new like well-being. So our perspective is don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Don't leave the wellness issues behind, even if you start to call your wellness program a well-being program. Now, well-being program content issues are many. We can look at financial wellness, we can look at resilience, we can look at work-life balance, we can look at life purpose, we can look at life satisfaction, we can look at quality of life, we can look at the level of personal peace, we can look at life simplification. So how do we reduce the amount of cacophony of issues that are grabbing our attention? We can look at the disciplines in science emerging around positive psychology from the Positive Psychology Center at the University of Pennsylvania. So that would be another area. We can deal with emotional quotient, so our EQ. We can look at fulfillment. We can look at the issues of vitality and energy. We can look at social support, and we can look at our passions, what gives us individually, what causes our passions to be enhanced, and what and how should our life reflect all of these different content issues. So when we want to include and enrich a wellness program with well-being, there's many different things that we can bring into the program to both enhance the novelty or the interest among the people who are served by the program so that they participate, but also to enrich our motivation and intrinsic source of motivation around wellness. So there are many different content issues we can address and include in our wellness and well-being efforts. Now, possible well-being interventions, and you can see by this particular graph or this graphic image of all the different things that can be included in well-being. There's lots of different components and component parts. We can include that in a health risk assessment, maybe perhaps calling our health risk assessment, no longer calling it a health risk assessment, but calling it a well-being assessment. It can have much of the same content. It can also include questions which get at more of our construct of well-being. We can have a separate well-being HRA, and that HRA can be a one-time event or it can be dripped out to the individual through a smartphone app or through an email. The Education and Experience series can include and address well-being related issues and any of the content issues we just went over. It can also have a retreat type program where you get a deeper chance to look at some of these issues and look at your own life. A well-being coach, so the coach can not just focus on health risk reduction and behaviors that help people avoid chronic diseases, but they can also include activities that are likely to enrich or enhance their quality of life. We also can have online learning modules which address various aspects of well-being. We can provide and have support group opportunities for people who want to work on some specific dimensions of their own well-being. And we can also create online communities that are interested in exploring the issue and applying it to their own life and choices and lifestyle. And we can also deal with issues of humor, of being able to include the ability for us to look at things from a humorous perspective or a lighter perspective. And we can also deal with what our contribution is to other issues in our community, social justice issues, or issues of working with those that have less than we do. So there's lots of community philanthropy opportunities as well. So these are, in summary, are some of the major ways we can take and pull a well-being emphasis into a wellness program. We can also have a community service aspect, which allows us to do something that contributes to the whole or to the community at large, and to do something that people need done. Now, the well-being metrics, some of them are offered by the Well-Being Index, which has been developed and supported by Gallup Healthways. And you can see the quintile, which 20% various states are in according to the metrics which they've used in this Well-Being National Index, which is published each year. So based on this, the green, darker green, the darker the color of green, the higher the well-being. The lower the well-being is in the gray, the lowest being gray, and then lighter green. So it just shows you some of the composite indicators that are part of that well-being 5 construct, and they've been consolidated into something called the Well-Being Index. And you can go online, do a search on this, and you can find out more about methodology, applications, and to see whether this is something that you might want to do for your own population. In addition, we can track average change in scores over time on scalar questions for issues like perceived employer support for well-being, perceived level of personal well-being by major domain. So if we wanted to break it out into the various areas of wellness and well-being, we can have an adequacy of opportunity to enhance personal well-being at work. So these are all options and alternatives that one can do to look at well-being metrics and their application in program management, as well as in being able to report back to management various accountability related issues about our well-being effort. Now, some key questions that I believe you need to be able to ask yourself and your senior management are: one, do we need to update our program, our wellness program, with a well-being emphasis? That's the first question. If the answer is yes, then there's some ways and alternatives and directions that you need to go in, but there also are additional questions. If you in fact have responded yes to that question, then what specific elements of well-being resonate with my leadership team? So if I were to take those content items that we started talking about related to the context of what well-being is about, which of those resonate with my leadership team? And how do I then augment those or bring them in to a wellness program activity? Do I also want to rename my wellness program our well-being program? That may be a legitimate choice or option that you're facing. Another question that you need to answer is, should we use well-being language to reframe wellness? Should we drop the term wellness and start to put well-being language in wherever wellness has been in the past? And do we want to really extensively make that change across our program? The fourth question would be, will well-being ultimately result in as much health improvement as traditional wellness? And as I read the literature and the research in science, the answer is no. And that's what causes me and our organization to basically say, let's look at this like the carrot cake example. Put them together, don't separate them or drop one and go to the other. So I don't believe that our existing well-being approach will in fact have as much health improvement value to the average employee. And the fifth question is, how deeply do we invest in well-being programming to address issues like our sleep and quality of sleep, social health, work-life balance, purpose, meaning, etc. So the issue is, how deep do we want to get into the well-being focus? Initially in the wellness areas 30, 40 years ago, we didn't want to get into well-being too heavily because it was really seen as essentially fluff by managers. So we tried to stay more close to medical clinical science around wellness. And now we're at a point where we have essentially said we're either not willing or not able to address these medical and health risk issues. Now let's move over and look at something else. But that's not a good perspective to have if our choice is to drop our focus on how to improve health and well-being. Now, a summary of key points on this module. Well-being has always been a part of wellness. It's just not been addressed. We haven't done very much to apply the concept to our worksite wellness programming efforts in most employer settings. And part of that's been because we wanted to avoid the criticism of being fluffy. Other disciplines like political economy and social policy have written about well-being for years. However, there's very little hard research about well-being interventions for wellness programs. We have a few advocates who have reported, but we do not have any of the independent objective assessment of well-being and its value in improving health. One of the more popular well-being constructs is the Well-Being 5 from Gallup Healthways. And that Well-Being 5 includes purpose, social, financial, community, and physical dimensions of well-being. There are a large number of potential well-being content issues that can be addressed in your employee wellness program. And there are a number of possible well-being interventions that can be deployed in employer wellness programs. Also, there are well-being metrics that can be used to guide programming efforts. They can be included in a well-being assessment, or they can be looked at as components or questions in an annual program evaluation survey that you give to employees. Each wellness program manager must ask some key questions, and those are the 5 questions that we posed in a previous slide. We would do well to avoid a mutually exclusive view between wellness and well-being, meaning we only do one of them, we drop one and focus on now the new one. And I think that that will create some novelty effects for our program, but the novelty effects will wear off fairly quickly. And I think that it would also leaves us in a weakened position, because if well-being does not produce some sort of economic value to the organization, then it's likely not to have the stability or the long-term continuity that is really needed by most workforces and most working organizations and work organizations. Well-being can add a valuable enrichment and novelty to your wellness program. So these, in summary, are some of the key points I believe associated with this particular continuing education module. Now, let's answer some questions. Our first question is, why are so many employers moving away from wellness to well-being? And I think that there are a number of reasons. First of all, I don't believe that we have really a true consensus about what wellness means, what its targets are, what its intervention should be, and how it should be structured in the worksite. So that consensus has really, I don't think, ever really formed very well. Secondly, I think most employers have underfunded their wellness programs. So they have not put the resources in to achieve the results that the programs have the potential to achieve. The third issue is that I think that we have oversimplified our message around wellness to the point where we just say to people, oh, you just have to do these 3 things or this 7 things or whatever. I think it's been an approach which has been overly simplified. And that has also contributed with the previous answers of mine to and ineffective programs. So we have a large percentage of what's being done in wellness and worksite wellness in the US that is really not producing much in the way of health improvement, risk mitigation, economic return. We also have an overemphasis on the risk issues. Because we were trying to stay away from the fluff problem, we ended up working and focusing on risk. And that overemphasis is not a positive thing, because when you start to talk to people about their risks, you immediately end up alerting them and giving them something to worry about. That's one of the issues that I find people also talking about is they say stop talking about risk and start talking about well-being. Well, I think that that's a good idea, but I don't think it's a good idea to leave the risk behind. Basically say, oh, the primary care doc should take care of that, or the HMO or the health plan should take care of that. I don't think it'll get taken care of. So the ability to leave those risks and completely drop them out of the picture, I think is a very unwise thing for us to do. I think another reason why so many employers are moving away from wellness to well-being is that there's a lack of congruence between their methods for wellness and their expected results. So I think they're disappointed that the programs have not produced more, but they haven't funded them, and they also haven't taken them as seriously or as strategically as they need to. And I think that their employers are, in general, are not real good about staying the course on anything. So if you have a wellness program that needs continual improvement and expansion and deepening and integration, it is difficult to get employers to recognize that and to stay with it long enough to produce and have methodology which will have more effectiveness and more results produced. So these are some of the major reasons why I believe so many employers are moving away from wellness to well-being. Next question is, what are the implications of this for the worksite wellness field? And I think there are a number of implications. First of all, I think it gives us the need to reinvent ourselves. So we do have to figure out how to take traditional wellness programs, update them, streamline them, activate them in some regards, and be able to help them be more important and perceived as valuable by employees. Secondly, I think we need to step up to recognize this issue and to say, you know, we probably have missold wellness and not done it in a way that is accurate. We've kind of said, oh, it's easy to do. You just do this, 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 and you somehow have this enormous effect going on. And I think that we need to be honest about that and step forward and step up to that. I think we need to ignore some of the more vocal critics that are out saying, oh, these programs never work and they never have anything good about them. I think that we're listening too much to some of those more vocal critics. I think we also need to get smarter about working with people, and particularly people in the millennial age categories. I think that our approach to wellness has been heavily crafted and oriented to the older worker and the non-millennial, and I think we probably need to update our wellness efforts so that we make sure we're addressing the needs of millennials. The third question is, what is the best perspective to have on these issues? And I think it's better to have a long-term perspective. I think we need to continue to focus on the health and injury risk issues in our populations. So I think that those are important to us. They're important for the human and humanitarian effect that they have on people, as well as the issues around the economics of health and well-being. I think we also need to focus on user experience more. We have not done a very good job of really putting pressure on our HRA, our health risk assessment vendors and well-being assessment vendors, to make the experience that people have with them a much more positive experience. So we need more focus on the user experience in wellness. The third issue is, I think we need to be more strategic in our orientation. I think we need to be able to think more about how these wellness programs fit with the health plans that come out of the ACA and that are used by our employer populations. And that we need to also be looking at sick leave issues, at workers' compensation issues, at disability management issues, and disability insurance, short term and long term, and the presenteeism issues, and not shying away from those, but figuring out how to measure them, how to build that measurement in, and then how to enhance it over time. I think we also need to update our interventions and our strategies around wellness so that they really do have a 21st century feel to them. And I think that we need to build on the science that has been years and decades in the building. I don't think we should just walk away from that. So that's the perspective that I would suggest that we take toward this issue around well-being and wellness. And the last point about that, in answer to that question, is I would see well-being really as the icing on the cake. And let's take wellness, give it a strong well-being positioning and focus and brand, and then move forward in figuring out how best to improve both the health and well-being of the people that we're trying to serve. Now, take the quiz for this particular module and you can test some of your recall and understanding of the material.